We need to take away like the comparison, that moral value. We need to try and help our athletes not compare themselves to each other in terms of body size, shape and size. Like we need to take away that comparison.
Hey there, welcome to our podcast. Before we jump into today's episode, could you please do us a solid? If you're enjoying what you hear, give us a 5-star rating and hit that subscribe button on your platform. It really helps us reach more parents, coaches, and youth in the youth athlete development scene. All right, let's get into this week's chat.
Because your body will just adapt to, I guess, what you expose it to. If you do it long enough, that will be considered its normal point, as well as homeostatic point as well.
Yeah.
And
just quickly, I just want to really make the point as well that like it's really important to start small and start basics. And I think in those sort of areas, if we can nail those, then you can start sort of experimenting a little bit more and you know, I guess trying new things.
Yeah, so what we've seen with the swimmers at Melbourne Swimming is like sometimes it's like I would like to see what they're actually eating. So I get them to take photos and they see the portion sizes. And it's like, all right, this is actually pretty good. Then I ask them, it's like, do you feel like that's actually enough energy? Do you feel like you've got, you know, can you function normally? It's like, probably not, no. Okay, right. Then maybe we need to go for something that's a bit more like more calorically dense in that case. So one of the girls, she was like, oh, she has like oats, yogurt, and berries in the morning. I said, all right, can you chuck in some, you know, small handful of nuts and it's a big squeeze of honey?
Yep.
It was like, all right, you probably get an extra 150, 200 calories right there, boom.
Yeah.
And she doesn't even notice it. And it's like, and she really enjoys it. So then you get that adherence side on top of that as well. So she actually quite enjoys that. And then my other issue that I've seen as well, and you can add on top of this, you mentioned about fueling strategies. Obviously, we can change how the gut responds based on, you know, how we make these baby steps over time. Is when you have, because we've got Labor Day coming up in Victoria, so it's a 3-day weekend. So we've got tournaments coming up. There's a lot of swimming comps, there's a lot of basketball comps coming up as well. There'll be some trials coming up for a lot of people where it's day after day. So what are some fueling strategies that people can do in the lead up to that to make sure that they're actually performing when they do have days of back-to-back competition?
Yeah, I guess that's sort of an area where you start to look at carb loading, essentially. And with this population, because there's sort of an age group that might not be so or have been exposed to sort of this before, once again, I would start small and think, okay, the day before, maybe during those, you know, snack times, I'm going to have like an extra serve or something. And so maybe, trying to experiment like that. And because then you're making sure that your muscle and liver glycogen stores are full, essentially, for those competition days. So I would start potentially with, you know, that one day and then maybe see how they feel, how they respond and how they digest and hold everything as well, because that's the other thing you want to be careful of, is that you don't want to overload an athlete and make them feel really like yucky and crappy on their competition day as well, which is another reason why we've got to, you know, it's slow progress. So maybe, you know, at snack time, you have that extra glass of, you know, orange juice, or maybe you sneak some lolly snakes in there or something like that. They can still be used, especially when we've got higher energy requirements, as a good place to implement those to make sure we're fueling. Other things, like I mentioned, like toast, like I personally like raisin toast. It's Easter time, hot cross buns, like they're a good one as well. And just maybe start experimenting and adding like an extra kind of, I guess, portion size essentially.
Yeah. And then I think a lot of people don't realize is like the palatability of food as well. So basically an easy way to understand palatability is like can you easily consume it and almost like consume it like mindlessly as well? So pack of lollies, M&Ms, Tim Tams, that type of stuff you can guzzle down, and it's so energy dense, particularly, right? So those types of foods you could probably get away with in terms of just increasing your calories just a little bit, obviously not using it as a primary source.
No, yes, exactly right.
don't want to be fueled by Tim Tams.
No, we don't.
No. But I think understanding that general idea, and that's why I said to the girl, to the swimmer, it's like adding some honey. She really enjoyed it. Extra calories right there. The fruit juice might be an easy thing because they might actually enjoy drinking it as well, and they won't have that same stomach upset as well. Then I guess the last part I want to talk about is, I think is probably the biggest one, and I think it's never going to go away, is like the body image, right? Food and body image and performance, like kind of like it's almost like, if I eat well, it's like it's almost like the default thought pattern is like, I eat a lot, I'm going to gain weight. That's kind of like a default for a lot of athletes, depending on the sport. Some sports they don't really care too much, whether it's like AFL to a lesser degree, NRL, they don't worry too much about it because muscle bulk is actually a requirement for that sport specifically. But looking at more like individual sports, so whether it's like, triathlon, track and field, then also swimming as well. These are the sports where it's a bit of a weird area. It's a very the hard area to navigate. So I guess, well, what are some of the key takeaways and the key points, for parents and even just for the athletes that do listen to this, little clip, because I'm sure Dave will clip this on social media. So there you go, Dave, easy one. What are the kind of the key things in order to understand when it comes to, the foods that you consume, the body image and the performance, because they're really, it's hard to have them in the same sentence for a lot of people.
I'm very happy that you brought this up, because this is an area I'm quite passionate about, but I also will state it's an area that I'm still learning a lot about. And you're right in saying that it's a really hard area to navigate, and it's something that I feel like it's just been present for so long. Like, if I think back to my sporting days, it's something I really struggled with as well. I guess my key takeaways, my stance at this point and this is for athletes, sort of any individual coaches as well, because they have such an influence on this age group, and parents, is that we really need to be mindful about the language that we're using. I think it's a really big area. It's being looked into and researched a lot more, and we need to almost have a bit of a neutral approach when it comes to our food and our exercise. And when I guess what I mean by that is that we're not assigning, moral value to food and to exercise. So, for example, unhealthy and healthy, good and bad, that food's bad for you, can't have that, because we know there's a place, food's food, essentially, right? And there's a time and place for food. As I use as an example before, especially in adult populations, they have such high requirements that they have to use sort of ultra processed foods to meet their requirements. And so in order to sort of take away, try to navigate take away concerns with and risk of concerns, with body image, we need to take away the comparison and that moral value. And so we need to try and help our athletes in particular not compare themselves to each other, especially in terms of, body size, shape and size. That's let's start there. We know that, especially in this, once again, youth athletes, their growth and development occurs at different rates. And so, and it's gonna look different as well. And so we need to take away that comparison, because then that's where issues with self-esteem arise. They can think, if I don't look like that, I'm not going to perform like that, and that's just not the case. We, like you said, know that athletes come in many, different shapes, sizes, but they also have many different, key performance abilities as well. So I guess some examples would be, in terms of language around food, is taking away good, bad, unhealthy, healthy. And then also I think as well, if you are going to start making a few of these changes that we've discussed today, making sure that your child has a bit of a say in it as well, and giving them the choice. There's a lot more research now coming out to suggest that if the child is sort of given has a little bit more input into their choices, it really helps with that like education and sort of like sustainability as well of those behaviors. And it really helps to support and nurture those good, healthy food behaviors. So, you know, for example, if you're trying at dinner time to experiment with a new food or food group or something like that, you know, having that on the dinner table, but also having like a safe food with it as well. So they feel like it's a comfortable, safe environment. If I don't necessarily like this, I still have something that I can eat as well and that I enjoy.
Yeah, it's almost like that gradual exposure over time as well. So no, I never actually thought of that one in particular. So, and then what I think from my perspective as being a strength coach is I try and just look at the numbers in terms of performance. So my job is physical preparation for competition or a particular performance. So say, for example, my kid, the kids come in and they say, oh, I feel like I'm not really up for it at the moment. And it's like, all right, what's going on? Do you feel like you've fueled enough? Do you think you're fueled enough for today? And it's like, what'd you have for breakfast? Didn't really have much. What'd you have for recess? I had cheese and crackers. I'm like, what'd you have for lunch? Ham and salad roll. And then what'd you have for afternoon tea before you came into training? I don't know, just like an up and go. And it's like, do you honestly think that is enough for you to do school plus do your double swims today? But you also have to take in consideration that your body was sore from yesterday's training.
Yes.
So you have to account for that. Do you think you've had enough fuel throughout the day in order to make sure that you're giving your best for today's session, or at least, you know, provide, you know, 70%, 80% effort for today's session? It's like, no, probably not. So what I tend to say is like, by the way that if we just increase your fuel consumption, your output in the pool may actually improve. So it's just like you have to really link it to the performance. So the fuel is a fuel to perform. And once you have enough conversations about that, then it's like, hey, can you just have, you know, a piece of fruit in the morning, a piece of fruit in the afternoon, see how you go on top of that. Ideally, it's obviously they need a lot more, but in the situation, we're just trying to get the baby steps. I'm like, all right, how do you feel now? Okay, I actually feel better. I feel like I got a bit more out of myself in training. I was like, okay, cool. I continue to do that. Next week, check in. All right, can we add in a little bit more? Because you said you felt better. Then we just continue to reinforce the positive behavior that they actually want to achieve. And then you're keeping them away from like, oh, I've got to look a certain way or I've got to be a certain way and all that jazz. So you're keeping them kind of focused on the goal or the objective that they actually want to achieve. And I think that's probably the thing that a lot of strength coaches can do without trying to be like, you know, we know enough about food and nutrition, but we don't have to be prescribing from that perspective. So we know that if they're not having enough fuel, it's going to impair their recovery. You know, you've got a competition coming up. Do you think your body's actually ready and prepared for that? So what do you think you need to do? And just kind of like get them to be more present and aware of what they're actually doing to see if it's in alignment with their actual goals as well. And that's more for psychological thing to see. I like to go back to the perspective of is what your current behaviors in alignment or out of alignment of your goals. I just put the onus back onto them. 9 times out of 10, they'll say it's out of alignment. So what do you think you need to do differently moving forward?
Yeah, I think that's a really great way to explain it. And essentially how I view that approach is that you're sort of taking more of a curious approach and a curious questioning approach. And that's something like we do actually a lot in our practice when we're consulting with clients and patients, because I guess linking back to your previous question about your body image, performance, etc., it's sort of taking away that element of like how do I explain this, like punitive in a way. So if like making them feel like they're in trouble if they didn't do this, or like they're going to be punished and whatnot, you're sort of you're being curious in your approach, and you're sort of trying to work with them and say, oh, okay, you feel this way, like what else can we add? We always want to add, we don't sort of want to take away. So I think that's really maybe that's a helpful way to describe it to the coaches and trainers out there who might listen to this as well, is just to sort of really stay curious with your questioning, because it's really going to help nurture those healthy relationships with food and exercise.
Yeah. Then I think, and it's obviously this is a very separate thing. So one of the kids, he says like, "Oh, I struggle to drink water. I always forget. Leave it in my locker at school all the time." I was all right, fine. I'm the same as well. I guzzle water. So what I said to him, because he does do double sessions quite often, is like, all right, what sports drinks do you actually like? I'm sorry, all right, just bring that in, and then you can consume that throughout the gym session. And it's like, oh, problem solved. At least he's got carbs for the session. He's getting his electrolytes in. And he's also getting his fluids up as well.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, then I check in with them the next time I see him. How'd you feel for that session? I felt pretty good. Felt a bit more hydrated.
Yeah. And that's giving him like a choice as well, which is really good. Yeah. Like, what can you do? What's achievable for you?
Yeah. They ain't babies anymore. You know, I'm not feeding them. They got to make their own decisions. They're about to be bloody adults in 3-4 years time, and they can't even get their own nutrition sorted. Or at least they haven't eaten enough to support their performance. So I try to use it, and once they start to implement, and once they start to feel the changes, and this is the way I treat training as well. Say, for example, I'm training you. I'll get you to do a specific movement. How does that actually feel? Oh, I actually feel looser. I feel like I'm loading up my legs more with it. Okay, cool. This is why. So I get them to feel the change first, get them to figure out what can they do, get them to go about it. Then I'll explain why afterwards. I think that's probably the easiest way. Then you can kind of add on top of that as well. But the good thing is I've seen, especially since with the club, is the more that we talk about what we can do, is they're actually coming in, having something to eat before training. I think that's probably a positive outcome I'm actually seeing, where before it was just like, oh, they're just bringing their water bottles. Some of them will use like some sort of carb and electrolyte blend during their training sessions now, because like we didn't even talk about the length of training as well. So, if you train for over an hour, we've got to increase your carb intake for the back end, because your fatigue will increase, performance will decrease as a result as well. But then I think the other part is if we lack those carbs, and I see this, your mind's fuzzy, as you mentioned before. Then if you're talking from a performance perspective, if you're underfueled and then you're still fatigued, then your mind ain't sharp. So then your body will actually down-regulate the requirements needed for your brain. Then it's just almost like it starts to shut down on itself in order for self-preservation. So if we underfuel, the body will just like naturally shut itself down. And there's pretty much no way you can really fight it. As much as you want to.
Yeah, try to.
Cool. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
I think it's I guess there's a lot I could add, let's be honest, but we want to start.
Let's go with two key takeaways. We'll keep it there.
Okay. My 2 key takeaways, which I think, are very relevant to youth athletes, but I think also just the general population, is that keep it simple and go back to your basics. So look at the quality of your meals. Are you basically including all the food groups? So the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating it's there. It's a guide. And if you ever get stuck or confused, you can always refer back to that. I think that's just it's a really good baseline and place to start. And so just making sure you're including, source of protein, veg, starch, carbs, grains, etc. in your meals and throughout your diet. And I think then secondly as well, making sure that you are eating consistently throughout the day. We know that's going to provide, I guess, a constant source of fuel, especially with this, with youth athletes, with all of their extra, training demands, school demands, etc. So they would be my starting place. I would start there, nail the basics, and then we can start incorporating, looking at more so fueling specifically before training, specifically before comp days, etc. So yeah, I would start there.
Yeah, I think for me, for a lot of parents and athletes, it's just make small adjustments, which will lead to big changes.
Yes, absolutely. You don't want to change everything at once, because we want to look for long-term sustainable health. And with adolescents and sport, basically the position statement, the statement from Sports Dietetics Australia is that we want to, or just essentially we're aiming for good health and sustainable health in this population, because it's such a big time period for growth and development. It's very vital.
Cool. Sweet. Thanks for your time, Steph. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, where we're going to see you in the next, couple months or a couple of years in
Oh.
the dietetic space. Where do you want to be?
Yeah. So I'm going to be finishing up this, I guess, introduction into sort of like an eating disorder world. I do also, I'm hoping to do the sports nutrition course with SDA. That way I can be a sports dietitian as well. I guess that's sort of my goal. And then I can start, I guess, working with athletes. I sort of started dabbling with a few of my run club friends at the moment, which is giving me some good exposure, but I guess they're sort of my goals at the moment. So yeah, baby steps. That's my message.
Unreal. Cool. Sweet. Thanks for your time, Steph.
Thank you.
You have just listened to the Inner Athlete podcast. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with the release of weekly episodes. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram to get great tips on all things youth athlete development and youth mentoring.